Hello, everybody. This is the SIG Cluster Lifecycle meeting. Today is the 18th of May, 2021. Please add your names to the list of participants and your agenda topics. I'm going to share the agenda document in Zoom chat. Do we have anybody new on the call? I don't think so. All right. So I have one topic for today, and I asked somebody from VMware who is involved in that to join the call and discuss it, but I don't think they will join. I guess they're busy. Basically, SIG testing, as you may know, had a sub-project that is called Testing Commons. Testing Commons was responsible for maintaining the end-to-end test framework and refactoring it to make it better suitable for external use. But this framework still resides in Kubernetes/test. And eventually, they wanted somebody to take ownership of the whole effort to create a new framework from scratch because they didn't like the original design. I think a lot of people agreed with that Gink Go and parts of the design were not ideal. So I think that Vladimir Vivian from VMware took some charge to propose a new framework design. And this is the design document. It's located in Kubernetes 6 end-to-end test framework. I read the design doc and it left a good impression on me. Basically, you should check it out. I'm not going to review it here in detail, but it's basically the TLDR is that it creates features. Features go into feature sets, and then you run tests on the feature sets. And each feature has a set of steps that you can execute to test this particular feature. I think the APIs was kind of nice. I mean, I always have doubts about frameworks in general, but I mean, we shall see what happens when people start using this more broadly. So why is this relevant to SIG Cluster Lifecycle? For kubeadm, we already use the KK framework for some bits, but the surface is fairly small. Eventually, we can move to this framework. It's not a substantial time-consuming refactor, if you can say. For our projects like Cluster API, I know they created pretty much their own framework from scratch also. It's using Ginkgo, but I saw discussions that they should move away from Ginkgo. In any case, it feels like this is the official, this will become the official framework that is supported by SIG testing. And it would be nice that a lot of projects move to it eventually. And of course, the most important part is that it's consumable as a repository, and you don't have to fork KK to use a framework. I don't know what is the state of other projects. For instance, Justin, do you have some sort of a framework in COPS?
It's very interesting you should mention that. So one of the things we have been doing in KOps is moving to kubetest 2. And with that, we have at last gained the ability to run our own EDE tests in addition to the, so, you know, we regularly run the KK EDE tests. And like Peter in particular and some others are doing great work to do this, Peter Reifel. But we can now run our own tests as well. And I think they added one recently, which runs the AWS CSI tests. So we have this ability to run tests that are distinct from the upstream EDE tests. And we are not bound to use like a framework of any sort. And I think currently I don't think there's a standard is sort of the answer. I'm writing a few that are not using, I like Go test to work, as it were, you know, like to just work. So I tend to just use Go test, and inevitably I am building up my own framework, as it were. Like, you know, you can't write E2E test without refactoring out common code. But it's not a testing framework. It's more a library of functions to interact with the Kubernetes API in a way that's more convenient. I'll put a link to that in the agenda when I'm done talking in a second. But I mean, I think I like this approach, and I think the lesson I would take away from this is we don't have to, like, as Kubernetes, like, come up with an official next generation test project and, you know, do big design up front. We can have a bunch of projects that try a bunch of different things, and we can see what works and what doesn't. And we can use this group, for example, to like collaborate and discuss what works and what doesn't work well. And if you want to try this framework in KubeADM or in any other project, I think that's wonderful. And I think, you know, that's good. I certainly share the concerns with Jinko, I guess. I think it just wasn't. I think Jinko evolved as like a port of a Ruby testing library or a Node testing library, as I understand it. And it wasn't really designed for Go, which is, I think, why some of the challenges arose. But yeah, I like this idea, and I like the idea of trying them in different projects.
Yeah, I think this is pretty much the current state. Everybody's trying to see what works for them. Inevitably, all of these separate efforts will have to create a set of common utils, which is like, how do you like apply timeout on a certain pod? How do you make sure that a certain deployment has a number of replicas, the expected? So these essentially will become very common, and they already reside in the KK framework. As you know, if you go to pod, you see a bunch of utils. And I think the idea is to start gradually moving some of these utils to the framework to centralize the utils, pretty much.
Yeah.
You on mute, Justin.
Sorry, I fail at Zoom. The ones in the KK library, again, have sort of evolved, and there are a number of functions that deliver that functionality, rather than there being a library that like makes it easy to interact with the with client Go effectively from a test. And so I will put a link to this sort of abstraction that I'm putting together. But I certainly agree with the idea of creating a nicer abstraction. I don't know that it matters, to be honest. If we have 5 of them, it would be better, or 10 of them. It would be better if we had 1, but I don't think it's a big deal to have a bunch of them and then eventually like converge on something else. Like, I know that's a little inefficient, but it is open source, and I think open source tends to produce duplication of effort over like trying to like converge. Convergence is harder than duplication, I think, in open source.
Yeah, definitely it is. I mean, also, this is also very new, this new framework. I really don't know what is going to happen, but I was hoping that Vlad can join this meeting. For instance, your feedback is valuable, that you're already starting something like your own framework that if maybe Vlad implemented your ideas in such a way that you can agree to consume his framework, it would have been further centralization. But yeah, I mean, separate frameworks is not really that much of a problem.
Right. I mean, for tests, it doesn't really matter. Like, I mean, certainly if there's a nice library that works, I think people will use it. But I think, yeah, it's hard when everyone's sort of getting started. But yeah, I'll definitely take a look at this and see if we can switch to it. But I'll put a link into it's just a PR at this stage for our Go tests.
All right. Any more comments on this end-to-end test framework topic? Okay. Any other topics for today? Cool. Moving to sub-project updates. For KubeADM, I really don't have anything to announce in this meeting. We are working on the V1 Beta 3 API. If you have any feedback for what we have planned for V1 Beta 3, you can add this your comments to this particular issue. We have a cap that we updated for 122. So basically the idea is to have a new API version in KubeADM 122. Like most of the high priority items are already merged, and we are left with some lesser priority items. But basically these are the best effort at this point. We will see what we have the time for. And it's a good thing that we have an extended release cycle this time. As you may know, the release schedule of Kubernetes moved to 4 months per release, which is, in my opinion, an improvement. Any comments or questions for KubeADM? Okay, moving to COPS.
Thank you. Yeah, we basically did a few releases recently. We have our 121 release coming soon, which is basically where we want to be in terms of schedule. So we are ahead of where we normally are, I guess, on schedule. And our 122 branch is open earlier in the schedule than it normally is. And so we are hoping to get in some bigger features like add-ons and things like that, but nothing massive has yet landed. But we are hoping for a happy 122 cycle with lots of fun stuff coming in.
Thank you. I joined one of the SIG off meetings, and I'm not sure if they contacted you, but basically they were complaining that one of the COPS jobs, I think it was COPS GC master or something like that, is very flaky. I think it's due to resource constraints on the job setup itself. And it was flaking a lot of SIG off tests because those require apparently more resources. Did they ping you on Slack or something like that?
If they might have, my Slack is always a disaster. I didn't see. You said SIG off?
Yeah.
That's surprising. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was Jordan, so he might as well ping you on the internal Slack. I don't know. Basically, let me try to find this job because I think this is the second time they are discussing this flake, because what happens is that they triage their end-to-end tests based on overall flakiness in the entire Kubernetes project. And apparently, if some of the jobs are very flaky, they try to contact the people that are responsible for the jobs. In this case, it was a COPS job, and they contacted us about a KubeADM problem in the past as well. I guess it should be in the COPS dashboard, maybe.
The COPS dashboard is pretty big, so you might not want to go for that one. But I'll reach out to Jordan and try to figure out what this is about, because yeah, I haven't seen it, but yeah, we can try to figure out what's going on there. I am surprised there's a SIG auth test that needs a lot of resources, but maybe.
Maybe just the way the job is failing is being reported as the primary offender. I don't know. Maybe it's here. I think it was like COPS GC or something. I don't know.
I will try to take a look at it.
Yeah, I mean,
you can
just
see our
ask.
grid
You
has a
can
lot of
also ask Mike. Mike, you can also ask Mike Dennis. He might
Okay,
know
I'll ask.
the
Yeah.
details about the job. All right. Any comments or questions for Cops? Okay, moving to Minikube.
Hello, I'm Steven. I've never been here before, but hello, all of you. Minikube hasn't been here in a while, so we had two releases, 119, 120. Some of the biggest things, we had an auto pause feature to reduce CPU usage when on use. So it detects, I think, after 5 minutes if nothing hit the API, it will kind of go into a sleep mode, reduces the CPU, and if it detects if it gets a new API ping, and then it will wake itself back up. So the first start after it goes to sleep takes a little bit longer, but after that it's back to normal. We had a Minikube build command because currently, or before this in Minikube, you always had to have like Docker on your machine if you wanted to build things. So what this is if you do Minikube build and then like the image or the Docker file, it will use Minikube's internal Docker, which will prevent the user from having to have Docker installed on their host machine themselves. We also had an add-on to support GCR credentials. I don't know a ton about that. And then we also added Minikube CP, so you can easily copy files directly into Minikube without having to do any SSH craziness. So these are some of the four biggest features in the last two releases there.
These are really nice features. So I guess you're trying to extend the Minikube surface as a utility toolkit with some of these new commands.
For sure, yeah.
So what is your experience with like importing BuildKit and using it as the backend for Minikube build? I'm assuming you're using BuildKit.
Yeah, I was actually, I was experimenting a bit with the build when we were actually having to like get the actual like socket and everything. So that was a lot more steps involved to do it kind of manually. We were manually doing like build kit commands ourselves just to kind of like test the prototype. So the Minikube build command is much simpler. It doesn't require all the setup and SSHing and getting a bunch of stuff set up. So
I see, but your BuildKit is the backend behind it, or maybe I didn't understand.
yeah, I can. Okay. I don't know a ton about this specific build command, but I do believe it uses BuildKit behind it.
I see. Okay, so no worries. I think Kubernetes has a similar problem that we currently, as part of our hack scripts, we are currently requiring the user host to have Docker. And I think Ben Elder from the Kite project will try to eventually modify that to basically use BuildKit instead. The original request came from the Kite project, I think. But this set of updates seems very nice. I also like Minikube copy. It's a nice extension.
For sure.
Any questions for Minikube? Okay. Looks like we are off agenda. Any last topics people want to discuss today? All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We have 40 minutes back. See you again in a couple of weeks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.